Hi, I'm Nicolene Peck, and I teach parenting and family communication, relationship development all over the world through the lens of self-government. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about 5 ways to help children find purpose in life. In this video, we're going to understand purpose a little bit, and then we're going to talk about 5 things that you can incorporate into your home culture to create an environment where children find purpose. Finding purpose is super important. In fact, I have had conversations about purpose with countless adults and youth. So it is something everyone's looking for. Why am I here? What am I supposed to do with my life? How do I find fulfillment? These are all questions that really are saying, what is my purpose? What am I supposed to do? And sometimes as we're looking for our purpose, we look a little bit too far. And we miss some of the obvious things right around us that lead us to our purpose. What are those obvious things? Our family relationships. Every person comes into this world already with a family. Now I know that there's some people who maybe, for whatever reason, don't get raised by their family members. But we can't get here without a mother and a father. We're hardwired to want to connect with those people so that we can find out who we are and what we should do with our lives. We want examples, people that we can look to, so that we can see what creates a life of happiness. Your children are no different. They are looking for that example in you. Purpose comes from understanding self-evident truths. And even though many people don't consider that, this is how we find our greatest purpose. Think of a person that you admire, or maybe is one of your heroes. Maybe it's a grandmother or a grandfather. Someone that you felt like truly did live an exemplary life, a life of purpose. You actually are using that relationship with them within your family to prove to yourself that you could live just such a life too. They are giving you purpose just by living their lives. The word purpose actually comes from a Latin word called propono. Pro means before. Pono means something was determined or decided. Do you realize that the word purpose means that something was determined beforehand? What you would be, or what your value would be, or your purpose would be? That's why people end up going to spiritual avenues to try to figure out their purpose so often. But when we look at someone who has come before us, like a parent or a grandparent, and we see how they've lived their lives, then we are able to see how we can live our lives too. They give us the picture by going before us of what we should turn out like in the end. So we're going to talk about the 5 ways that parents can instill purpose in their children. But before we do that, click that subscribe button. There are so many great videos on this channel that will help your family bond together so that you have greater success in developing purpose for yourself and for your children. Click the subscribe button now. Here are the 5 ways that you can help your child develop a sense of purpose. And all 5 of these ways are talked about in more detail in this book called Parenting a House United, and it's the 2nd edition. Number 1, develop a family vision. A family vision is a plan that you make for what type of a family you want to have at a time in the future. So you see what you're doing, you are planning ahead of time, before you become that family, what type of a family you want to become. You're establishing purpose for your group relationship called family. This is going to lay a foundation for what it means to have personal purpose too. They're going to need a personal vision for themselves. And that can be very easily found by following you and by understanding some self-evident truths about themselves, such as, well, I was born a girl, so what does it mean to be a good woman? Or I now am married, that's self-evident, what does it mean to be a spouse to somebody else, right? These are all self-evident truths that lead toward purpose or mission is another way that people often talk about the word purpose. So as you sit down with your family, plan an event that happens in the future, maybe 10 or 20 years in the future, and talk about the sights and the smells and the sounds, the conversations that will be had at that particular family event. And then plan in your hearts and in your minds how you will practice for that family event, that you will try to have every day, that type of feeling that that family event has in your home. And if it doesn't feel that way, that you'll stop and fix it. Number 2 is plan to have a deliberate family culture. So planning a vision is a very deliberate thing to do. But we also can plan other parts of our family culture. We can plan how we are going to communicate with each other ahead of time and then hold ourselves accountable. In our family, we know certain skills for communication. Me and my husband taught these skills to our children years ago after we learned how well they worked doing treatment foster care for troubled teens. We taught these skills following instructions, accepting no answers and criticism, accepting consequences, and disagreeing appropriately. Understanding those 4 basic skills, as well as the 5 skills that we use to correct and teach our children, helps our children prepare to communicate more openly with us and to correct themselves as they go along their journey in our home. Now, how does this help with purpose? Well, when a person plans what their purpose in life is and the direction they're headed, they are not going to be perfect going straight in that direction. They're going to have bumps. They're going to get off track and get distracted, and they won't be pointed toward their purpose. They're going to need to accept consequences for their life decisions, give themselves instructions to get back on course, and accept no answers from themselves and others, sometimes when they might be making bad decisions. So when a person can do those 4 basic skills that I discussed, they actually can be self-governing, which gives them a better chance of finding their life's purpose. Number 3, have mentor meetings. So in our family, we have multiple meetings. We have family meetings, couple meetings, and individual mentor meetings with our children. The mentor meetings are what I'd like to focus on now. If you want your child to develop a sense of purpose, then what you need to do is make sure that you're talking with them about goal setting, you're making commitments, and helping them follow through with those commitments on a regular basis. Now, I wouldn't start making commitments until a child is probably around 11 or 12 years old. Before that, just set goals, and if they meet the goal, great, and if not, talk about what they can do better to achieve that goal the next week. We meet every week with our children. We discuss their social life, their academic life, their spiritual life, goals or concerns, things they want to overcome, their behavior challenges, and their successes. This is a great time for parents to plan with their children what they want to do just in this next week. And if they can plan what to do in the next week and follow through, then that can create a habit so that life planning can start to occur. In the Teaching Self-Government Parenting System, I actually have created mentor journal books that you can use to have weekly mentor meetings with your child. They can schedule out things that they're going to do and make plans for their future success. So if those are helpful to you, you might want to check those out on teachingselfgovernment.com. Number 4, have deep discussions with your child. Now, the easiest way I found to start discussing deeply and openly with my child was to start when they're young, because once they put up walls and start closing you off when they're older, it's harder to get them to break down those walls. But if they just have a habit of communicating with you already openly, because they've been doing it ever since they were young, then you'll have great adolescent years with your children. One of the things that I did to develop a habit of discussing deeply with my children was we read books together and we talked about it. Now, this is a great book to read when your children are a little bit older, especially if they're already starting to put up a little bit of a wall and not wanting to talk to you about things. This book is super relevant to all of your relationships. It's about a family who does not have their roles in the right place. So what you can do is you can read a section of the book, and then talk about it. Talk about if you've ever done that in your family, or do you think that would help our relationship to make a deliberate decision like that? Have your children give some of their insight as they're seeing how the children aren't able to get the parents to understand until they get their roles in the right place. This happens in every family, and it's definitely worth a discussion. But there are so many other great books too that you can use to discuss with your children. Books like Laddie or Little Britches, books like the Little House on the Prairie series. There are so many books. Sometimes even books that are kind of not so great can lead to some great discussions. Although, I will give you a tip. Books that are a little bit more classical that transform you every time you read them, those are books that you can discuss at length forever. If your children are younger, you may want to discuss these books. These books each teach one of the 4 basic skills. So, following instructions, accepting consequences, disagreeing appropriately, and accepting no answers and criticism. They're stories about real children and how they learned that these skills would be transformational for their relationships. There are so many great stories. The Little Engine That Could, The 3 Little Pigs, they all teach life lessons that our children drastically need nowadays. So as we discuss deeper through books, then we can start discussing the media, the things that are happening around us, and our children can feel like they are well informed because their parents took the time to tell them what was happening and how to think through it when everybody else is just following the crowd. If you want your child to have purpose, they can't be just like everybody else. Mediocrity is not purpose. Being like everybody else is not purpose. Do you realize that it's the weird people who are the ones who have the most purpose? This means that your children have to have different relationships than everybody else, different discussions, deeper discussions. But probably the number one thing that will help your child lead a life of purpose is if you have purpose in your life too. You living your mission in life or your purpose as a parent is actually the greatest mission you could ever have. Do you realize that as you fully dedicate to that, that creates a vision of purpose that they cannot get out of their head? They know that unless they get to that same place, they have somehow failed. They want the happiness that you have, which means they're going to want to have a family too. If you've shown them you love it, and it's the best thing you ever did with your life. So if you want your children to have purpose in your family, have purpose in your relationships, have purpose in your life. And if you have other purposes that you're supposed to do, maybe write some book or talk to certain people about a bill or something, let your children see that too. And they'll see that a person who lives a life of purpose is never done impacting the world to be a better place. If you've enjoyed this mini class on purpose and helping your children live according to purpose, maybe you would like a full class. I created a full class on this channel called The Expectation Trap versus the Cycle for Success. This class will change your relationships and change the way you run your days. Click on the link to The Expectation Trap versus the Cycle for Success now so that you can start having smoother days and more united hearts in your family.